In 1875, or 1872, the Parliament of the United Kingdom created an act called the Pacific Island Protection Act. And the act was initially put in place to protect the islanders that were being brought to Australia to work on Australian cane farms, but it also protected the tribes here. It protected us on 2 points. First of all, it limited, in 1875, the amendment to the Act in Section 6 limited the jurisdiction of the monarch of the Parliament of the United Kingdom and her courts to being over British subjects only. And given that tribal people have never been British subjects, that means that their law, their statutes, do not apply to us. Now, that's something that offends a lot of courts when you say it to them, but over in the East they're getting used to it. They still don't like it, but they're getting used to it. Section 7 of the same Act, under the title Saving of the Rights of the Tribe, says that the monarch of the Parliament of the United Kingdom wasn't allowed to extend or construe to extend sovereignty or dominion onto this continent or the Pacific Islands, and that sovereignty and dominion was to remain with the chiefs and the rulers and the peoples of the tribes. Now, the next important piece of legislation that came out of England in relation to this continent was the Constitution 25 years later. The Constitution said in section 51.26 that the Commonwealth could not make laws for people of the Aboriginal race. Section 127 said they couldn't count us as part of their population. The reason those two sections were drafted into the Constitution was because they had to abide by the previous law that had been enacted, and that said they couldn't take our sovereignty. So they couldn't count us as part of their population, and they couldn't make laws for us because we were not subject to the monarch of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, nor the sovereignty of that Parliament. There's also a set of rules called Halsby's Rules. These rules dictate how the Westminster Parliament can operate and how they are to create law. If you go to the relevant issue, which is the third edition of Halsby's Rules, if you go to page 337, paragraph 559, part 12 and 12.1, pardon me, it states very clearly that the Parliament of the United Kingdom was not allowed to usurp the sovereignty of the tribes, and the tribes was not allowed to usurp the sovereignty of the Parliament of the United Kingdom. That was why when Burnham stuck the Aboriginal flag in the sand at Dover in 1988, the Pommies laughed at him because they knew that that was not a lawful way to take sovereignty over someone else's country. And they also knew that they could not take sovereignty here by doing the same act. The Attorneys General of the States and the Commonwealth have written to us and told us that they claim that the United Kingdom took radical title and sovereignty over the whole continent when Arthur Phillip arrived in 1788. But the problem with that particular statement is that the Judge Advocate General of the First Fleet, Captain David Collins, wrote in his journal in 1796, 8 years later, that he had a conversation with Bennelong, and Bennelong explained to him how the tribes still held their land under their tribal title, and how that the tribe had a system of title for various portions of land, and that each of the tribal members had their own piece of land that they held and they could pass on to someone in their family or a friend in the tribe. And they recognised that the tribes still had their own sovereignty and title over the land 8 years after the Crown claims it took sovereignty here. Now, what happened in 1967, in the referendum of 1967, was an absolute whitewash.